When National Conservatism first appeared, many thought it outre and a bit scary. We favored sovereign nations with borders. We thought national governments should promote the welfare of all of their citizens, including working-class hinterlanders and minorities, not just transnational ruling elites. We wanted government to be actively concerned with maintaining a healthy culture and a strong society. We thought life was full of real constraints that could not be wished away, such as those of human biology, physical resources, and spending budgets. Many of us prayed and studied the Bible. Who were these people anyway? Why were they so agitated and disruptive? Where did they get their funding and their chutzpah? Were they an intellectual salon, a political movement, a dark money conspiracy? Some greeted the NatCon apparition with derision and contempt, others with instinctive recognition and sincere curiosity. Now, 5 years on, our purposes and precepts have gained traction in intellectual circles and success in voting booths across the United States and Europe. I contend that national conservatism has become mainstream, MSNC. For example, last summer, a group of conservatives and libertarians released a Freedom Conservatism Statement of Principles. It was billed as a bold challenge to our National Conservatism Statement of Principles. Its organizer said that it was issued because the NatCons proposed to turn America into an authoritarian white ethno-state. His words, which he repeated for emphasis. But the Freedom Conservatism Statement itself was totally insipid and anodyne. After a few days of puffery, it disappeared without a trace. In contrast, the National Conservatism Statement has been endlessly parsed and robustly criticized and defended and extended, moving debates forward on many deep and urgent questions. The Claremont Review has just featured an intense 18-page symposium, and those are really big pages. The left, too, has been whiffing. When the Brussels City Fathers attempted to shut us down, they said it was because we were a hate group that threatened public safety. Their actions were universally condemned and their reasons ridiculed. Writing in the Free Press, Oliver Weissman said that the only time he'd felt unsafe at a NatCon conference was at a session on common good conservatism where he feared he might die of boredom. That was a panel with Hadley Arkus, Janice Rogers Brown, Josh Hammer, and John Yoo, so he must have been joking. His point, I think, was that treating earnest argument as a threat to safety is not just illiberal and anti-democratic, but it is ignorant and futile. And we had a thrilling, inspiring conference, all of it posted on our website, which we hope to build on this week. Yet, the Belgian progressives were right to regard our ideas, as threats to safety, to the safety of their own political juggernaut, which they had thought unstoppable. National conservative parties and politicians have been making impressive gains in European and American elections and in India, well represented at this conference and elsewhere. April in Brussels was a minor skirmish in an elite effort to forestall further conservative advances in looming EU and national elections. Their efforts failed, just as similar efforts are now failing in the United States. Across both continents, left-wing parties are showing their teeth, and the conceit of a progressive arc of history is in the dustbin. Establishment conservatives are reluctantly collaborating with populist party crashers, and those that don't, like Britain's Tories, are also off to the dustbin. The evolution of name-calling is amusing. The media no longer calls us fascists and skinheads and has retreated in unison to the term far right, as in far-right Viktor Orban, the most popular and influential head of government in Eastern Europe, and far-right Giorgia Meloni, the most popular and influential head of government in Western Europe. Leaders who champion strict immigration controls, abundant, affordable energy, an end to civil violence and anti-Semitism, a strong economic safety net, patriotic schooling, and a revival of faith, family, and fertility are not far right. They are the new mainstream. The occasion of our ascendance is not a happy one. We saw when others were dithering that progressive ideology was not a passing fad, but a powerful, well-organized force whose policies would devastate our societies, economies, and politics. Now the devastation is evident to all with eyes to see. But NatCons have risen to the occasion. We spied a political opening in the new class divide between grounded citizens and their woke overlords in government, corporations, and universities. The Republican Party is now a working-class party attracting growing numbers of Black and Latino voters. Our efforts to reinstate nationhood, tradition, and piety have been picked apart in the journals, but have resonated in the world beyond. We have ferreted out many horrible abuses and corruptions, from rigging social media to transgendering school children, and used them to illustrate larger problems and threats and possible paths to recovery. As a pro-market NatCon, I've made it a point of invoking an economic principle at each of our conferences. This time, it is the admonition of the investment advisors. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. That some of us have entered mainstream politics means that we are going to win some and lose some, form opportunistic coalitions, negotiate and compromise, bow to public opinion, and make hard choices amid fogs of uncertainty. And that will present some hard decisions, some hard choices to those of us on the outside. We got to this point by sticking with principles that seemed unpopular and inexpedient at the time. It is often hard to tell from the outside whether a political compromise is brilliant, prudent, a feint, or a surrender. The will to power is a central feature of human nature, as the Democrats are now reminding us yet again, and conservatives are hardly immune. Moreover, the practices of old-style politics may have lost some of their traction in an age of managerial government and cultural decadence. The political and bureaucratic elites of Washington and Brussels have been remarkably indifferent to the rise of popular opposition. For all of their talk about populist threats to democracy, they seem to regard elections as mere nuisances, easy to manage around. I think they are overplaying their hand, but they are smart people with cards left to play and tricks up their sleeves. Our atomized, feminized, self-absorbed culture, where individual autonomy is the holy grail, is not a progressive invention, but it is highly advantageous to those who would replace nation and community with homogenizing diktats. Perhaps the arc of history is being supplanted by an arc of technocracy, this one an actual arc, calling for new forms of activism. One thing clear is that in our new circumstances, ideas will need to be married to ideas and organization. NatCon Brussels did not succeed through press releases and op-eds and lawsuits, important as those were. It succeeded because our leaders, Yoram Hazony, Anna Welitz, and Rafa Ice, spent 4 sleepless days in guerrilla action, outfoxing the authorities, sneaking in at one point a cardinal, a princess, and an MP through a garbage dump in the back while the police were distracted. Dismantling and transporting conference equipment into the night while others were abed, to undisclosed locations, popping up by surprise in the morning at distant venues, keeping participants on the move like the militiamen of Lexington and Concord. It was ultimately a physical triumph. A small example, I think, of the sort of sure-footed assertiveness demanded of us now. Some national conservatives want to leap into the current political fray. Others to build a new politics from the ground up. Others to stick to their studies and writing and think tankery. One thing you learn on the inside is that criticism from the outside can be empowering. We have organized this week's conference to deliberate our options deeply and, let us pray, productively. These are new conversations for new circumstances. We are no longer intellectual lone wolves baying at the moon. We are now traveling, on the move, traveling with packs, some of them friendly, some of them hostile, into uncharted territory. Thank you.